The South Dallas sky was merciless. The June sun hung overhead like a furnace, pouring relentless heat onto the earth below. The asphalt shimmered with waves of haze, the temperature soaring past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but it felt like the world was being baked alive. Belarus, a 65-year-old black veteran, stood outside a Target on Cedar Hill Road, clutching a stack of newspapers, sweat soaking his gray shirt. His job as a local newspaper vendor wasn't glamorous, but it kept him and his twin sons afloat. Despite his age, Belarus carried the sturdy frame of a man who'd served as a combat medic in his younger years, his sharp eyes holding the calm of someone who'd seen too much yet still chose kindness. It was just past noon when Belarus, checking his delivery list, heard a sound that stopped him cold, a faint, choked cry, not the usual wail of a child but a desperate, stifled plea. He froze, ears straining. The cry came again, thin and fading, swallowed by the hum of car engines and footsteps. His brow furrowed as he scanned the parking lot, where rows of cars gleamed like mobile ovens under the sun. The sound was coming from a silver SUV, parked crookedly near a red curb, no shade in sight, all windows sealed tight. Belarus approached, his old leather shoes crunching on the scalding asphalt, each step feeling like crossing an invisible line between action and hesitation. Peering through the rear window, his heart seized. A 4-month-old baby boy lay strapped in a car seat, his face flushed a deep, dangerous red. His tiny lips were cracked, eyes shut, only the weakest whimpers escaping. Sweat plastered his sparse hair to his forehead. The boy was fighting to breathe, each shallow gasp a fading cry for help. Memories of the battlefield flooded back, moments when Belarus had pulled comrades from the jaws of death, where every second was a gamble between life and loss. He pounded on the glass. "Hey, little guy, you okay?" His voice was low, urgent. No response. The baby didn't even stir. Belarus glanced around. A few passers-by cast curious looks but kept walking. A middle-aged man in a polo shirt, carrying a plastic bag, shook his head. "Don't touch that car, man. You'll get in trouble." Belarus didn't answer. He pulled his phone from his pocket, hands trembling slightly as he dialed 911. "I've got an emergency," he said, voice steady but sharp. "A baby's locked in a car at the Target lot on Cedar Hill. Signs of heat stroke. Send help fast." The dispatcher promised assistance, but the flat tone made time feel like it was crawling. A young woman with a coffee cup approached. "What's going on?" she asked, eyes widening as she peered into the SUV. "Oh my God, there's a baby in there." She stepped back, hand over her mouth. "Did you call the police?" "Yes," Belarus replied, eyes fixed on the boy. The baby's breathing was nearly gone, his tiny chest barely moving, like a candle flickering out. A crowd began to gather, more curious than helpful. A man's voice trembled. "You shouldn't break into that car. I've seen people sued for that. Wait for the cops." "Wait," Belarus echoed, his voice dropping to a near whisper. He looked at the boy again, then at the unforgiving son. The car's interior could be over 120 degrees Fahrenheit by now. From his Army medic training, he knew a 4-month-old couldn't survive this heat for more than a few minutes. Every second was a silent blade. The crowd grew, some pulling out phones to record. "This is crazy," one voice said. Another whispered, "Can't believe a mother would do this." But no one acted. Anger surged in Belarus's chest, not at the crowd, but at the paralysis of the moment. He'd sworn never to stand by while a life slipped away. Without another word, Belarus strode to his delivery stack, grabbing a steel bar from his toolkit. As he returned to the SUV, the crowd backed away, some gasping. "Hey, don't do that. You'll get in trouble," someone shouted. Belarus didn't listen. His hand gripped the bar, heart pounding. He glanced at the baby one last time. The boy's lips were turning blue. No more cries. Time was up. He raised the bar, sunlight glinting off the metal like a warning. The crowd held its breath. With a deafening crash, the rear window shattered, glass sparkling as it hit the asphalt. The car alarm blared, piercing the air. Belarus reached through the broken window, unlocked the back door, and yanked it open. A blast of suffocating heat hit him, like opening an oven. He unbuckled the baby, lifting him gently. The boy's skin burned to the touch. Belarus tore off his shirt, wrapped it around the child, and rushed to a shaded awning nearby. "Call EMS again," he shouted to the crowd. "Tell them it's urgent." Sitting on the curb, he cradled the boy, whispering, "Hang in there, kid. You've got this." His hands shook, not from fear but from rage at the crowd's inaction. Phones kept recording, but no sirens yet. Belarus checked the boy's breathing, faint, almost nothing. He pressed a hand to the tiny chest, feeling a fragile heartbeat, and memories of soldiers he couldn't save flooded back. Not this time. The crowd's whispers grew quieter, their eyes a mix of curiosity and judgment. A young man, still filming, stepped closer. "Yo, you might go viral for this," he said, almost excited. Belarus didn't look up. "You filming for clicks or proof?" he asked, voice sharp. The man hesitated, lowering his phone. Then, a scream cut through the air. "Where's my baby?" Lucy, the boy's mother, blonde ponytail bouncing, sprinted from the store, a grocery bag swinging wildly. Seeing the shattered window, she froze, eyes wide with shock. What happened?" She turned to Belarus, fury replacing fear. "Who gave you the right to break my car?" Belarus stood, still holding the baby. "Your son was locked in there," he said evenly. "In this heat, he was barely alive. I had no choice." The crowd murmured, some shaking their heads. Lucy stepped forward, voice trembling with rage and panic. "I was only gone for 5 minutes. I left the AC on. You had no right to touch my car. I'll sue you." She pointed at him, face flushed. Belarus didn't flinch. He met her gaze. 5 minutes was too long. The baby stirred faintly, a weak whimper escaping. Lucy's eyes flicked to her son, and for a moment, her anger cracked, replaced by raw fear. Is he okay?" she whispered, voice breaking. Sirens wailed in the distance, a faint hope cutting through the stifling air. Belarus didn't look away from the boy, but a sharp question pierced his mind. Would he pay a price for doing what was right? The wail of sirens grew louder, slicing through the heavy air of the Target parking lot on Cedar Hill Road. Belarus, the 65-year-old veteran, sat on the curb, cradling the 4-month-old boy in his sweat-soaked shirt. The child's breathing was shallow, but he stirred faintly, a sign of life. Belarus whispered, "Hold on, kid. Help's coming." Inside, though, a storm churned, not just for the boy's survival, but for the woman before him, Lucy, whose rage and threats of a lawsuit echoed like a warning shot. Lucy, blonde ponytail askew, clutched her grocery bag, pointing at Belarus. "You broke my car," she screamed, voice trembling with fury. "You think you're some hero? You had no right to touch my property. I'll sue you, I swear." The crowd murmured, some shaking their heads, others still filming. A voice muttered, "She's crazy. He just saved her kid." Belarus stayed focused on the boy, checking his breathing again. The faint rise of the tiny chest gave him hope, but he knew every moment was critical. He stood, still holding the child, and faced Lucy. "Your son was dying in that car," he said, voice calm but cutting. "I called 911. I waited. No one came. 5 minutes in this heat is enough to kill a kid." Lucy stepped back, but her eyes blazed. "I left the AC on," she shouted, voice cracking. "I was only gone for 5 minutes to grab stuff. You don't know me." She turned to the SUV, opened the driver's door, checked the dashboard, and cursed. "Damn it, it must have shut off when I locked it." She spun back, torn between anger and panic. "But that doesn't give you the right to smash my window. Do you know how much that'll cost?" "I can't afford this." The crowd's whispers grew louder. A middle-aged woman in a nurse's uniform stepped forward. "You should be thanking him," she said firmly. "If he hadn't acted, your son wouldn't be here." Lucy whirled on her, face red. "Stay out of this. This is my business." But her gaze faltered as she looked at her son in Belarus's arms. The boy whimpered, lips less blue but still weak. Lucy's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Belarus said nothing more. Arguing was pointless. He just wanted the boy safe. But he felt the tension rising not just from Lucy, but from the crowd's judging eyes, the phones capturing every moment. He'd seen this before in war. A right decision could still lead to unforeseen consequences. He'd acted, but now he wondered if he'd pay a price. The sirens were closer now, red and blue lights flashing as an ambulance and police cruiser screeched into the lot, kicking up dust. 2 EMTs leapt out, a young woman with a tight ponytail and an older man, moving with practiced urgency. Belarus handed the boy over to the woman. "He's overheating," he said, voice steady but urgent. "Locked in the car too long. Breathing's weak." She nodded, placing the boy on a stretcher, checking vitals. "We've got him," she said, rushing him to the ambulance. Lucy tried to follow, but Officer Carlson, a stocky man in his 50s, stepped in. "Ma'am, we need to talk," he said coldly, his nameplate glinting. Lucy spun around, eyes red. "He broke my car," she shouted, pointing at Belarus. Carlson glanced at him. "We'll get to that. First, I need to know why your son was left in a locked car in this heat." Lucy froze, mouth opening but no words coming out. I was only gone for 5 minutes, she stammered, voice fading. I left the AC on. I didn't know it shut off. I just went for diapers and formula. She looked to the crowd for sympathy but found only cold or pitying stares. A man muttered, 5 minutes is long enough for everything to go wrong. Belarus stood a few steps away, still gripping the steel bar, now flecked with glass. He said nothing, but his eyes stayed on Lucy. He saw her fear, but also her lingering anger. Carlson turned to him. You called 911? Yes, Belarus said calmly. I heard the cries, saw the kid, knocked on the window, called for help, waited. But his breathing was fading. I had no choice. Carlson nodded, jotting notes. You know breaking into a vehicle can be considered a crime in this state? Belarus's jaw tightened, but his voice held firm. I know. I also know that boy was slipping away. I've seen people die from heat stroke. I wasn't going to watch it happen. Carlson didn't respond immediately, scanning the crowd, the phone still recording. A store employee spoke up. He's right. The kid was barely breathing. If he'd waited, it'd be over. Lucy glared at the woman. You don't understand. I'm his mother. I didn't mean to hurt him. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. Carlson faced Lucy again. Ma'am, we have witness statements. He called for help, waited, and acted when it got critical. Right now, there's no basis to charge him. He paused, voice colder. But you need to explain why your son was left in a locked car in this heat. Lucy recoiled, as if slapped. She looked at Belarus, then at the ambulance speeding away with her son. The crowd thinned, but some lingered, phones still rolling. The young man who'd talked about going viral lowered his device, muttering, This is intense. Belarus stood there, feeling like a soldier stepping off a battlefield. He didn't want praise or to be called a hero. But as he looked at the shattered glass glinting on the asphalt, he knew he'd done right. Still, Lucy's threat hung like a dark cloud. Would she really sue? And if she did, how would a 65-year-old man on a meager income face it? The ambulance's siren faded, leaving a heavy silence. Belarus glanced at the horizon, where the sun still burned without mercy. He knew this wasn't over. The Target parking lot on Cedar Hill Road was nearly empty now, only a few stragglers lingering, phones still capturing the aftermath of the drama. Belarus, the 65-year-old veteran, leaned against a lamppost, gripping the steel bar now cool in his hand. Sweat dried on his brow, but a storm churned within, not just for the boy's life, but for Lucy's threat of a lawsuit, ringing in his ears like a warning bell. He glanced at the shattered glass sparkling on the asphalt, fragments reflecting a decision he couldn't undo. Officer Carlson, stocky and expressionless, was still speaking with Lucy a few yards away. She stood by the silver SUV, hands covering her face, shoulders trembling. Her voice, no longer sharp, was laced with panic and despair. I didn't mean to, she repeated, as if convincing herself. I just went to get diapers and formula. I'm his mother. I love my son. Carlson took notes, nodding, but his eyes stayed on her, weighing every word. Belarus didn't interrupt. He'd said what needed saying, done what needed doing. But unease nodded him. He'd faced death in war, saved lives under fire, but this was the first time a right action felt like it could be twisted into a crime. Would Lucy really sue? And if she did, how would he, with his modest newspaper vendor income and veteran's pension, handle it? An older woman, likely a store worker, approached Belarus. She wore a thin sweater, her kind eyes framed by thick glasses. You did the right thing, she said softly, handing him a water bottle. Don't mind her. Without you, that boy wouldn't be here. Belarus took the bottle, nodding. Thank you, he said, voice low. But he didn't drink. He just stared at the horizon, where the sun still burned relentlessly. At Southside Medical, doctors and nurses raced against time. The 4-month-old boy rushed into the ER with a body temperature of 104.2 degrees Fahrenheit, lay on a treatment table, surrounded by beeping machines and urgent voices. Temperature's critical, Dr. Elena Ramos said to a nurse. Start fluids now. We need to cool him down fast. She checked the boy's pupils, noting weak but present reflexes. A few more minutes, and this kid might not have made it. In the hallway, Lucy sat hunched on a plastic chair, clutching her phone but too scared to look at it. She'd followed the ambulance after police clearance, leaving the SUV with its broken window behind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her son, blue lips, chest barely moving. She wanted to scream, to blame anyone. But deep down, she knew the truth. She'd messed up. 5 minutes, just 5, had nearly cost her son's life. Tears streamed down her face, but she wiped them away, not wanting the nurse's judging eyes to see. She feared their silent verdict. Bad mother. Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother. Sis, what's going on? There's a video online about the Target thing. People are talking about the old guy who broke your car. Lucy opened X, her heart sinking. A video, posted by someone in the crowd, had gone viral. Belarus smashing the window, carrying the baby out, and Lucy screaming threats filled the screen. Comments split sharply. Some called Belarus a hero, others a vandal, questioning if he'd be treated differently if he weren't black in a mostly white suburb. Lucy skimmed the comments. This mom should be arrested for abandoning her kid. One read. He saved her son, and she's worried about her car. Ungrateful, another said. But there were harsh ones too. Who does he think he is, smashing someone's car? Where's the law? Her stomach churned. She didn't want to be the center of scorn, but she couldn't deny the pain of being called a bad mom. She turned off her phone, burying her face in her hands, stifling sobs. Back home, Belarus sat in his small living room, afternoon light slipping through the blinds, casting stripes on the old wood floor. His twin sons were at school, leaving the house eerily quiet. He turned on the TV, and local news was covering the story. 65-year-old veteran saves baby from hot car in South Dallas, the anchor said. But his act of breaking the car window has sparked debate. The parking lot video played, showing Belarus's determined eyes as he held the boy. He shut off the TV. He didn't need to see more. Standing on his porch with a cold coffee, his phone rang an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Hello, Mr. Miller? A soft, trembling voice. This is Lucy Green, the mom from today. Belarus stiffened, gripping the phone. He stayed silent, letting her continue. I just left the hospital, she said, voice raw. They said my son's temperature was 104.2 degrees Fahrenheit. The doctor said 2 more minutes could have meant brain damage or, worse. Belarus closed his eyes, relief mixing with a heavy weight. Is he okay? He asked, voice low. They're keeping him overnight to monitor, Lucy said. But they say no long-term damage, because of you. She paused, struggling for words. I'm sorry for yelling at you. I was panicked, felt attacked. But you saved my son. Belarus didn't reply immediately. He looked at the quiet street, where neighborhood kids rode bikes. I did what I had to, he said finally. I just wanted him safe. Lucy took a shaky breath. I'm not suing. I swear. I just want to say thank you. Her voice broke into muffled sobs. I messed up. I'll never let this happen again. Keep him safe. That's enough, Belarus said, his tone softer but firm. That's what matters. He hung up, the silence heavy. The call wasn't closure, it was clarity. He'd saved a life, but the storm wasn't over. Online, the video kept spreading. A local paper ran a story. Hero or vandal? Veteran faces controversy after saving baby. Comments on X grew heated, some praising Belarus, others questioning his motives. One wrote, if he wasn't black, would anyone call him a vandal? Belarus didn't read them. He didn't need social media to validate his actions. But he knew, in a world quick to judge, this story wouldn't fade easily. 2 days after the Target parking lot incident, the South Dallas sun still blazed, though a rare breeze softened the afternoon air. Belarus, the 65-year-old veteran, stood outside the Oak Cliff Community Center, adjusting the collar of his cleanest shirt. He wasn't used to cameras or attention, but when a local TV station invited him for their Everyday Heroes segment, he didn't say no. Not for fame, but because he thought his story might inspire someone, somewhere, to act when it mattered most. Inside the makeshift studio, the lights burned hot, though not as fierce as that day's heat. A woman with short, silver-dyed hair greeted him, handing him a water bottle and leading him to a chair against a Dallas skyline backdrop. The interviewer, Diane Carter, a poised woman in her 50s with a deep voice and warm presence, smiled as he sat. As the cameras rolled, she looked at him, her smile genuine. Mr. Miller, she began, you've been called a hero, a good Samaritan, even a lawbreaker. How do you describe what happened that day? Belarus sat straight, hands clasped, eyes steady. I saw a child in danger, he said, voice slow and clear. I called 911. I waited, but when his breathing faded, I knew waiting was wrong. I did what I'd want someone to do if my son was in that car. Diane nodded, encouraging. Did you think about the consequences? Breaking a car window could lead to legal trouble. Belarus took a deep breath, Lucy's threat flashing through his mind. I did, he said, but I'd rather be sued, fined, or arrested than stand over a child who didn't make it. I've seen heatstroke deaths in war. I couldn't let that happen in front of me. The parking lot video played on a nearby screen, Belarus shattering the window, cradling the boy, his steady gaze amid the crowd. The studio fell silent. Diane's voice softened. What would you say to people watching, who might face a similar situation? Belarus looked into the camera. Sometimes, doing right means breaking a rule. If you see a life slipping away, you don't need anyone's permission to act. Just do it. After the interview, Belarus stepped outside, the evening air cooler now. As he descended the steps, a voice called, "Mr. Miller." He turned. Lucy Green stood there, holding her son on her hip. The boy, now healthy, stared at Belarus with curious eyes, a tiny finger in his mouth. Lucy, in a simple t-shirt, hair loosely tied, looked at him with no anger, only remorse and respect. She approached slowly, as if afraid to disrupt the moment. I wanted to say thank you," she said, voice trembling. "I was wrong. I yelled at you, threatened you. But if it weren't for you, my son," she stopped, eyes welling. The doctor said 2 more minutes, and he might not have made it. Belarus crouched, meeting the boy's gaze. The child smiled, reaching out to touch his cheek. For a moment, the world quieted. No cars, no voices, just a connection. Belarus smiled faintly. "He's okay. That's enough." He stood, looking at Lucy. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep him safe." Lucy nodded, tears falling. "I've signed up for parenting classes," she said, voice breaking. "I'm switching jobs, too, to work from home so I can be with him. I want to do better, for him and for me." Belarus nodded, his gaze softening. "That's all any of us can do. Try to be better." He paused, then added, "You're his mom. You can do it." Lucy gave a weak smile, hugging her son tighter. "Thank you, not just for saving him, but for making me see I need to change." She turned, walking slowly to her car, the boy waving at Belarus as if sensing something profound. That night, Belarus sat on his porch, a glass of sweet tea on the railing. His twin sons slept inside, the neighborhood quiet. He opened his phone, scrolling through X posts. The story was still viral, with thousands of comments. Some called him a true hero. Others debated the broken window. One comment stood out. He did what anyone with a heart would do. But if he wasn't black, would they call him a vandal? Belarus turned off his phone. He didn't need social media to confirm his choice. He thought of Lucy's remorse, the boy's smile. He thought of the war, where he learned hesitation could cost a life. That day, he hadn't hesitated. That was enough. Weeks later, the story faded, but its lesson lingered. Lucy started her new job, taking parenting classes, texting Belarus updates about her son's first steps, his laughter. Belarus replied sparingly, but each message reminded him his action hadn't just saved a life, it changed a family. The Oak Cliff community saw Belarus differently now. Neighbors, who once knew him only as the newspaper guy, shook his hand, offered coffee, called him the neighborhood hero. He'd smile, shake his head. "I'm no hero," he told a friend. "Just someone who couldn't stand by." The story of Belarus and Lucy didn't end with medals or fanfare. It ended with a simple truth. Sometimes, doing right means facing risks, judgment, even anger. But when a life is saved and a mother learns to love better, that's the greatest victory. Belarus Miller never asked to be a hero. But when a 4-month-old boy needed saving, he acted, not for glory, but because it was the only right thing to do.